Oftentimes, the centerpiece of your battleground playtime adventures when you were a kid was the massive playsets, and nobody did it better than G.I. Joe. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I know a lot of you who watch this channel are fans of G.I. Joe, a real American hero in the 3 3/4 inch scale during the vintage 1982 through 1994 era. But it wasn't just G.I. Joe, it was Cobra as well. And we will definitely talk about that enemy faction as part of this stream. Now, before anybody inserts any bigger is better or size matters comments or dad jokes, okay, now that's out of the way, we'll ride right past that. We'll get that done nice and early. Now, so first I want to welcome everybody to this Saturday edition of the Toy Connections online live stream, or TKO. Broadcasting to you. It's Saturday in most parts of the world, early Sunday in other parts of the world, but we've got a great agenda today and some very special guests who both, you know what, if you follow this channel, you'll recognize both of them. So the first individual here is actually, I thought I knew him before I knew him, and the first time we actually started talking, I didn't realize we hadn't met yet, because anytime I assemble my flag, I go and watch his video. So I got used to his voice and got used to his cadence, and he's been on the show before, and he's back yet again. The curator of the Cobra Convergence annual, what do you call it, pop culture G.I. Joe summer event, and the man, the myth, the legend behind Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Here's Hooded Cobra Commander 788.
Hello, curator. I like that. It makes me sound so much more sophisticated. Yes, so let's have a nicely curated show today. A good curated afternoon to everyone. I'll be curating here with you today.
Well, apparently, Hail HCC is people are very happy to see you in the chat. So,
thank you. Yes.
You know what? I feel like I just talked to you this week, even though I didn't, because if you saw my Sky Striker video come out, to make my video different, I set up the flag, right? So, of course, I put on your video, and of course, it's kind of like the whole hokey pokey thing, right? Brian goes, you put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you do the hokey pokey, and the flag comes together, you spin around, and that's what it's all about. But anyway, also joining us is the individual who named the stream as TKO. He's basically a regular on this channel, one of my best friends in basically the entire toy community. Everybody loves his voice, the excellence of eloquation himself, Sir Hans Chow of the Kensguard.
Oh yeah! It's Saturday afternoon. Let's talk toys. How you going, Ken?
You went full macho man.
Pleasant afternoon, and good to see you.
And I'm not sure how I went Kensguard there, how I went from G.I. Joe to Game of Thrones in the same breath, but whatever. Like the size joke, we'll ride right past that and pretend it didn't happen, even though it's there for all time. So, how are you two gentlemen doing?
It's not bad. Mm-hmm. Stayed up rather late last night trying to get a video ready, but I'm alive. I'm here. I'm happy to be alive. We're good.
Is that the bazooka video?
Thanks for spoiling it, Hans.
Oh shoot! Sorry.
Anyway, Hans, hold on. I gotta ban Hans from the channel. Right back with you. Hold on. I'll take.
All right. Do you want to mute your mic while you do that?
How much I enjoyed the video.
So we don't hear you cursing in the background. You might want to mute your mic while you ban Hans.
Okay. I get excited whenever I see Joe, so I logged into my Patreon and shows me all the new videos. I'm like, something to do tonight. So
well, and you haven't gotten a lot of that lately, so I'm glad to be back. I had another hiatus, but I'm back.
That's good. Well,
the quality we receive from gentlemen such as you with regards to G.I. Joe stuff, I would prefer the frequency, and I wouldn't trade that. The quality off of frequency. I would never would myself.
Right. I'll unban you then. You're fine.
All right. Well, I was working on a Terrordrome video recently, And of course, I was like, darn, I forgot what issue the Terrordrome first showed up. I forgot when this first happened. So I do a search, and who's got a Terrordrome video already done? So I sit there, I listen to that, and I'm sitting there talking on camera, taking credit for my own thing. Like, and the Terrordrome first showed up in issue 45 when we first heard his name in issue 46, blah, blah, blah. You know, it showed the fire bat showed up in the wrong colors in this episode and the right colors in that episode. I'm sitting there, I'm like, anyone who sees the future Terrordrome video, you know, he didn't know I was doing it, but he gets credit for the script because I'd forgotten all those stats. I was just so happy to have my drone out for the first time in a long time. But
that's helpful because, like, I forget what I've said in videos, so I have to go back. I have to, this is why I never trust my memory. I either got to write it down or just go back and check.
Well, why don't you give us a quick update on the engine issue? Because for those who don't know, if anyone thinks that that Brian here gets any special treatment from Hasbro or any of the toy companies, mostly Hasbro because he's a Joe guy, his Sky Striker showed up missing both engines.
Yes.
His HasLab Striker.
Yeah, and I opened it live on a live stream, so that went great. It's a quality control issue that apparently other people have had too. I had to check and make sure that wasn't the only thing missing. That does appear to be the only parts missing, but it doesn't have the engines, and that's kind of important. So, I contacted Hasbro customer care, and they're supposed to be taking care of it. Took a little bit of back and forth with the bot that they have to send automated replies. I know the bot's name is supposed to be Sandy, but I'm pretty sure that that's a robot. I don't think that's a real person. But thanks, Sandy, for eventually understanding, you know, the English words and phrases that I was saying, and so we'll see. We will see if we can get that. But we have an incomplete flag, or not flag, but an incomplete Sky Striker.
I threw you off. Oh, that means you watched my video. Thank you.
That's nice.
Because you're mixing up the Sky Striker and the flag. It means I've influenced you a little bit. Well, those engines are important for most people because there's new blast effects that go on them. So
yeah, and I'm no airplane scientist, but I think you need those. I think those are important. So we'll see.
According to the Defiant in your collection, though, you might be a rocket scientist. See what I did there?
Yeah, that it does. Yeah, and I do have. Yeah, I got the rockets. I got the rockets for those. I wonder if I never tried. Maybe I could put the rockets from the Defiant on the Sky Striker.
Technically, they did it in G.I. Joe, right?
Lemonade out of lemons. I should have seen this as a customization opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's why. See, this I should have played from Hasbro's point of view. I should have paid extra for this. Because like what they actually gave me with those empty spots in that box is opportunity for creativity.
Headcanon.
Paid for the opportunity. That's the best.
And Impossiblepie, I did review the carded figures. They're pretty good, but they're a little. The color isn't very sharp. Let's put it that way on the figures. So.
Impossiblepie wants to know about the carded figures and the gap in the wings. I have not assembled the wings yet, but I have seen some folks who have had an issue with that, so I have a plan for that. As far as the figures go, the figures all appear to be fine. I think there's one of the cards that's a bit dented, but I don't really care about that. I'm not going to leave them on the card anyway. But the figures were all fine. I admit I was just a little put off by opening the thing and then just having disappointment at the end of it. So I put it back in the box, and I will get it back out again when I have the parts, and we'll take another look at it. But yeah, I do know that some folks have had some issues with the wings, so I'm gonna take some extra care with those. When
heat it up. When you heat it up, you still have to push it, but it's not as bad. So, yeah. I guess you didn't get it, did you, Hans? Did you get the Sky Striker, or is
no, not as I was going to, and then I heard it couldn't accommodate anniversary style figures, and I'm an anniversary guy, so I didn't. I mean, I love the Sky Striker and its and the legacy that it kind of carries. But if you do ask me what's my favorite GI Joe aircraft, it's always going to be the Thunderwing. So, which I find is a superior jet and probably the best toy that was put out in anything before. There's been no aircraft from the GI Joe line that's trumped it. Fight me in the streets. I don't mind. I have my points. I understand now that's it's a little hard to find, but
and you'd also be, given your overseas, it'd be hard to find you to fight you in the streets. So, you know.
Hey, I'll be there in June, and there's a street, and
All right, and medical coverage, coverage, Okay. All right, let's say a quick hello to the chat. It's quite busy. A lot of comments flying in. So let's just say this quick hello. We got Brendan Haley, Radical Toys, Gazz, Nolan, Joe Ricondo. Ooh, hope I didn't miss anybody. Pericles, Dragon Ball, Zed, TJC. Click that. Adam from Go Figure, Emerald Knight Photos, figuratively speaking, Ratface44 Reviews, Quip. Scroll, Hedgehog Action, Eddie Rodriguez, Warbird Tom. Thought I would get that wrong, but I got it right, so it's all good. We got Jeff Morris, we got Silver K, we've got G7M9W, My Buddies Customs, a lot of people, K-Dog Broadcasting, and a few people who spilled. Ryan Sweeney and Palpatine 1975. Quite a busy chat today. Wasn't sure it would be this way, but I'm happy. Glad you all are willing to spend your time on this channel for this chat. Photo Viper, hello to you. Master Versal Toy Hunter, Stephen S. And I think we're caught up. And I know, yes, some people spilled the beans that it was my birthday yesterday. I was trying to ride under the radar with that. But if I seem sluggish today, it's because of that. Hello, Bob Squad as well. Just saw your name pop in. So if I'm seeing a little sluggish yesterday, it's due to having a bad diet the last couple of days. But we've got these two fine gentlemen over here to chat about the big play sets of G.I. Joe Real American Hero. And Hans looks like he wants to say something.
No, it's from all the damages and the weirdness I'm hearing with the Sky Striker. Like Casey Wheeler helped me out with the hiss, and I'm here and I'm thinking to myself, am I gonna be missing treads? Am I gonna be missing a gun?
Yeah, this is what I'm worried about, and I apologize, like, if we're going off on this tangent, but it's a thing that came up, and now it's a thing that we got to worry about, because like we waited a long time for this thing, and it was not cheap. And I'm not the only one that's had issues with it. So this is the kind of thing that really it just can't happen. It just can't happen. So yeah, I'm worried. Yes.
We're afraid as a community, I think I hope it'll be okay though. Hopefully that they'll use this as an opportunity and be like, oh well, we messed this up, but we'll get it next time. I appreciate hopefully that go-to and gusto attitude that Hasbro, will show. I am confident that they will do better next time, and I'm willing to keep purchasing their goods because I do think they make a fine product.
So, or the eternal optimist.
That's what he's here for. That's part of his what do you call it? His shtick.
It's true. And if all that fails, I'll just take off my shirt and flash my abs. But anyway.
You go ahead. I think some people in the chat would be quite impressed by your abs if you decide to show them off. So
that'll help the algorithm.
It might help the algorithm. I'll just change the thumbnail to be like "man with abs," and then people click on it. They're gonna be like, "What's all this GI Joe stuff?" All right. So, was there a playset that stood out for you more than others? Like, did you have a favorite as a kid and a favorite as an adult? Were you putting your hand up, or were you pointing to Brian to answer first?
Pointing to Brian.
Oh, you want to defer this one? Okay, you can defer this one.
Well, I mean, the first one I remember is the 1983 headquarters, the GI Joe headquarters. And that was one of the first ones. So that was memorable to me because at the time it just seemed so huge and it had so much to it. Of course, it's been dwarfed by many things since then. But back in 1983, this base just seemed so amazing. So I think that's probably the one that sticks in my memory the most, just because it had the most impact at the time. But my goodness, they got incredibly opulent as the years went on with the play sets. They got bigger and more complex and just went nuts. So yeah, I have some sentimental attachment to that 83 headquarters, but it's if I'm looking at just in sheer features and playability and just the impressiveness of it, there are well, actually, really most of the others are an improvement on it.
Yeah. What about you, Hans?
I didn't, as I told you offline, I didn't own any, but if we just consider the word playset to be like almost anything, I would have to defer to the only one I owned, which was the tactical battle platform. That was so cool. It was so cool. I mean, you can land helicopters on it. It had a little fold down ramp. I mean, the little legs, which I learned about a week ago, were adjustable. Anyway, and then they had like a little battle station where you stored little guns, and the command center was really cool. I lost the chair for my command center, but I still used to sit my Joes on it, so they were basically sitting on an empty pipe, which was probably super uncomfortable. The child me didn't care, and it had a crane, and it was play feature wise, and considering how early it came out, I mean, it was phenomenal for its size, and it was, I mean, wonderful to blow up because you could pull it apart very easily, get hit by a torpedo, whatever, and it was easy to put back together. And so to me, from a nostalgia point of view, that's the one I played with, and that's the one I really, really enjoyed and loved. But if we go for most technical and most impressive, it still is and continues to be the Cobra Terrordrome. But and nostalgia-wise, it's definitely the tactical battle platform.
Fair enough. I mean, we all had different exposure to GI Joe as a kid, and I received the mobile command center as a birthday gift back in the late 80s, and for me, like, that was the first one I had to reacquire when I became an adult. And I know that your mileage will vary because depending on what you liked or didn't like in your childhood, you might either get the stuff that you already had, or you might get the things you didn't have to get that experience. And for the most part, like, with my early GI Joes and the early Transformers, I wanted to get all the stuff I didn't have as a kid. But the mobile command center was the one that stood out as the one I needed to reacquire as an adult. Much later on, the Flagg kind of became my staple. I liked the Defiant, but to me, the Flagg was the one that had to be my holy grail as an adult. Now, we've seen some comments in the chat that basically admit to the fact that the Defiant's actually probably rarer. And I've told the story a few times before that when I got the mobile command center in the late 80s, I had the choice between that and the Defiant, because they came out the same year. And I chose the mobile command center. As a kid, I just saw more features and more playability with it. Now, I'm not sure if anybody wants to comment on that. Hans, you look like you were going to say something.
No, I think that's actually a wise choice to me. I think because the Defiant was one of those, like, it's one of those things like Rome burning. It's like, wow, I don't want to be part of it, but wow. But the mobile command center, I could kind of start to think of how to potentially play with this thing. But because I was not a space guy, I didn't think, oh, well, I'm going to take my Joes into space and fight whom, So to me, I kind of agree with the ground thing and MCC. I was about to call it MCV again, which is a Command and Conquer reference to all the people who remember Command and Conquer, but it's MCC. But and it also had wheels, which was fantastic. Granted, according to what people tell me, you shouldn't roll it around too much, for I believe it is far too close to the ground and you may damage the ramp in the front. But I mean, once again, garage. I don't think it had a heliport. It had a detention center, command center. It had multiple levels of play, and anything that adds that kind of versatility to playtime is always very valuable. I know that the Defiant had of course, a rocket ship, one command center, and the cockpit. I don't know what to call that, but I don't know if it really possessed that three-dimensionality that the MCC possessed.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to that, let's go back to the beginning. And I mean, look, Brian, you said that this was something you remember as a kid. You know, probably a lot of good memories with this particular thing. Like, talk us through this particular playset. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I got it. Of course, it's very modular. It's this got the silver plastic, front walls. It's got a bay for a tank on one side. It's got a bay for the vamp on the other side with a lift. It's got like an elevating lift on it. It's got a jail, so you can put Cobra Commander in a jail that he can break free from. It's got a space for file cards. It's got a space for accessories. It's got a helicopter landing pad. They eventually, when the animated series came out, they had a version of this on the animated series, which is much, much bigger and much more base-like. In reality, this is too small to be a headquarters. It's more like an outpost. And in the comic book, that's actually what they used it for. Also, as you can see, it's got no top, it's got no back, it's just got the front and the sides. And even in 1983, I thought that was a little odd, because I'm protected from over here, but if they shoot something over or if they go around, I'm totally vulnerable. But we still had a lot of fun with it. I would caution that it has a lot of parts and a lot of breakable parts. So if you're trying to get one, even if you get it complete and intact, just be careful with it, because it can be fragile in places, especially the tabs where the walls connect. But we had a ton of fun with that. It's got lots of play features. It's got a computer, a giant 80s style computer with like the reel-to-reel tape and all of this. It's ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. It was a pretty good deal back in 1983, and we just had tons of fun with it.
What about you, Hans?
I had that helipad. I'm just realizing I had that helipad. I don't know where it came from. I thought it was a Star Wars helipad. I don't know why Star Wars would use helipads. I'm also now realizing that I had my spotlights on my tactical battle platform backwards.
Huh.
I had them reversed. I thought the little bump was man.
I think that the tabs are different. I mean, it's the same basic design on the
top,
tactical battle platform, but I think they altered it slightly. So you may not have that wrong necessarily. But the gun pod thing that goes in front, you could pretend that that's a spaceship in a pinch. You could pretend you could put a guy in it and fly it around. So it's not designed as a vehicle, but you can use it for that.
If the hover could launch that little hovercraft thing from the back, then that's not a far stretch. My friend had this one, and I didn't think it was a G.I. Joe base. And he would be like, this is a G.I. Joe base. I'm like, this is not a G.I. Joe base. He didn't put the stickers on, so I didn't know. So there were no stickers on anything, but we still used it for pretty much anything that was 1/18 scale, which in those days was everything. But I remember the jail cell being very easy to fall apart. And I remember we actually used that to our advantage in playtime.
Yeah.
But it was I don't know. Let me see. The nature of the set, though not the best, it certainly set a standard for what would come in the future. And I think that's always very important. And even if you were to own this now and play with it, it's still a lot of fun. But it does seem primitive versus what would come in the future, but it's
Absolutely.
still a fantastic set. And I think anything G.I. Joe has blown out anything from any other toy line ever until the 90s. And I will stand with that.
That jail, anybody in that jail cell is on the honors system, because, you know, I mean, anybody could just climb out. It's very low, you know, you just climb out and you're free. So yeah, there was some imagination required in the playing with the thing.
The jail cell in the MCC, I think, probably broke every regulation in the Geneva Convention. That thing was a refrigerator just lowered into the ground. It was like,
yeah, that was the sweat box. That was the
sweat box. So this one by far was a much more considerate and humane solution for imprisoning people.
Yeah. For sure. And for me, the box does a lot for it. There's a lot to kind of like help with the displayability of it. It all fits back in the box when you take it apart. So I don't know, like the box doing what it does makes it so iconic. Yeah, you know, you're both right. This playset would be exceeded later on by some of its later toys down the line, but with the way it was featured in the cartoon, it's just so freaking iconic. You recognize it right away. You hear the theme song, this is what you think of. And I know everyone's jonesing to talk about it, so let's look at these two bad boys.
Oof.
What do you want to unpack on this?
Yeah, the big two,
yes.
You could say. Well, let's start with the Terrordrome, because I have a feeling we may linger on the Flagg for a little bit. But the Terrordrome, I think, is fantastic. It's an enemy base. It's a Cobra base, right? And we need that. The before that, the Cobra base we had was made of cardboard. You know, so not only was it a Cobra base, it was a Cobra base to rival anything that G.I. Joe had. And a lot of work went into the fire bat mechanism, you know, the different rooms that it had inside. It was I still think it's pretty fantastic. I think the biggest knock that I have against it is some of those parts are more fragile than they should be for a play set that size. It could be a bit sturdier, I would prefer. But as in terms of the details, in terms of the features, it's just got it's loaded with features. I mean, everything opens, everything has something there for you to play with. So yeah, it's one of my favorites, and I know that it's the favorite of a lot of people. I can see why. That pop-up fire bat is just cool. That it is just a cool thing. It's still cool to play with now.
The dome mechanism. That's they didn't have to. It could have just been a jet on an elevator, but they did it. They did it, and then they put the Viper on top. The Cobra look. And I think one thing that's very unique about the Cobra Terrordrome, and you can kind of apply this to any toy playset that has ever come out, it has no photo-friendly side. Every side is photo-friendly. It is an enclosed structure. We don't get that. We end up with the Barbie doll scenario where the front is a house and you turn it around and there's your playset. But Hasbro went the extra mile in these days and gave you a full 360-degree play experience. I, once again, never owned one, but I remember the commercials showing that the entire system could rotate, and I don't think that was a feature that they ever got, and it didn't.
Yeah,
but if
that would have been nice, though.
It would have. It would have been wonderful if the whole thing could rotate. And I don't know if this was on purpose, but the claws can attach to the exterior. Was that on purpose? Was that in the instructions?
I don't think so, but well, I'm not sure. But it does work. I mean, it works great, actually. It looks really cool. I mean, you already have lots of technical detail on the side, and you can hang the Cobra Claw on the doors as well. And it makes it look even cooler. It makes it look even more geared up and technical. And yeah, it's really gorgeous. It's very well engineered, and like you said, they didn't have to do it this way. Sometimes I think maybe Hasbro was sort of trying to take a dump on their competitors a little bit, you know, kind of like
flexing.
Look what we can do. Can you do that? No, I don't think you can. Look what we can do.
And I think that's what made them great, because I mean, when we think back, it's mostly Hasbro. To me, at least, it's mostly Hasbro, and I think a lot of they had their competitors shaking. I feel. Look at what I mean. There's no other toy line that has been spoken about as fondly from any standpoint, technical nostalgia, as I find as GI Joe has been. I mean, you'll get younger kids coming up and saying the same thing, and I think also to the three-dimensionality of the Terrordrome, in addition to the claws and whatnot. And we don't see this anymore. I mean, we don't see playsets anymore, but there was a refueling station, which means to a certain degree they'd already played into the idea that their vehicles would get damaged in battles and need to be refueled and repaired. It didn't feel like a hollow experience or a backdrop for your figures. It was a part of the play. It was a part of the experience. And therefore, when you purchased it, it wasn't just this giant thing that you'd build and it'd be a backdrop. It'd be something that would enhance everything. And nowadays I find, because I bought a playset recently, and it really just feels like a backdrop for the dinosaurs that we think. It was a Jurassic Park playset. It really just feels like a backdrop for the dinosaurs to destroy. And if that's the case, I could have bought some blocks for $12 and destroyed that. You know, it would have been cheaper. But the Terrordrome was definitely not that thing. And I mean, that upon the vessel upon which the Terrordrome currently sits would have been, you know, the gradual evolution of that same idea.
Yeah, let's broach the topic. The elephant, the giant 7.5-foot elephant in the room. And there are some knocks against the USS Flagg as a playset, and a lot of people do kind of see it as like it's so big that it becomes just a backdrop and a thing that you put things on rather than you play with. And I can see that. I can see that criticism. Although I didn't have the Flagg as a kid, I had a neighborhood friend who did, so we got to play with it a lot. And we used it a lot. It was not just, you know, a place where things happened around it or above it. We had a lot of stuff going on with that thing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Is it the best ever? It's certainly the biggest ever. I mean, you can see the Terrordrome is sizable. It's quite large, but as you can see, it fits on the deck of the Flagg. That's a challenge. It was a challenge for kids and families at the time it came out. It's a challenge for collectors now to find space for it. In fact, I don't have mine assembled right now. I'll have to watch my own video to when I put it back because it's just so big. And if you're a toy collector getting toys that you display, it may indeed become something where you just put a bunch of jets on it and don't really do a whole lot else with it. But I will say that at the time it came out, you know, back in '85, we did a lot with it. We had a lot of adventures with it. We already had the jets, and now we had something that we could, you know, use to interact with the jets. And I think when Top Gun came out, it renewed our interest in the Flagg, because now we could like do Top Gun stuff with it. I think we set it back up so we could do more with it. So yeah, it was it got a lot of play. Sometimes it was like a staging platform for adventures, like even when we would have land adventures, missions, you know, on land, would start them on the flag, and like that would be where the troops would gather, and then we would take everything outside to the backyard to have the battles. So we even when we weren't directly using the flag, we'd still find ways to include it.
I think attack wise, Cobra wise, the flag always feels like this thing where if you were to stage an assault against it, it would be Storm Shadow and Firefly doing some kind of covert missions against the kind of thing. And I think that because in a pitched battle, unfortunately, the guy with the bow and arrow and the two swords does not seem to serve much of a purpose amidst all the high-tech weaponry. So in the place where there's infiltration, the vice versa seems more valuable. And the same could be said for the Terrordrome. It gives them something to attack and to be. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't have any friends who are actually in, like, everybody fought to be a Joe. Nobody wanted to be a Cobra kind of thing. But I think for the unique opportunity to be a Cobra, having a flag, it might actually be funner to blow up than the other way around. Also, isn't this thing like 6 feet long?
Yeah, or 7.5. It's really big. It's I mean, I have an 8-foot folding table to put it on to have enough length for it. It's also very wide. It's more than 3 feet wide. It's very it's huge. It's huge. So it is a challenge. This is why I'm saying, like, if you're a collector and you really want this thing, just make sure you really want it, because having a space to put it is a challenge for most people. But Cobra did not have anything comparable to this, so it wasn't necessarily a fair fight in that way. But yeah, like you said, you send your saboteurs at this thing. You can send the Moray hydrofoil if you want to, and that's cool and everything. But they have jets.
That's a problem. That is a problem.
But yeah, Firefly. This is what you send Firefly out to sabotage.
All the gentlemen I have seen who own a flag, at least thus far, have built like a superstructure. Michael Mercy, G.I. Joburg, the Scuba Pete, all of them have built a structure upon which to place. And they've even gone as far as to give it wheels. And the enhancements you can add by giving it some degree of storage capacity and whatnot, it really does enhance the flag. So in the same way that Hasbro did not give you your Sky Striker engines, the flag was perhaps an opportunity, and especially now as we're big kids, to enhance that that has been given.
And what Joburg and Michael Mercy did, that's a great idea, and that's something to consider if you're going to get the flag or if you have one, because it not only does it make it easier to move around if it's on wheels, but if you have storage below it, you can use that space a bit better. So I really do think that's a fantastic idea, I would suggest that if you're at all handy and you want to build things, that's a great use of the space. And it does help. The dirty little secret of the flag is that under the deck there is actually nothing. It's just the superstructure, just the frame pieces, and there's nothing actually there. So building something to put it on actually does help quite a bit.
If you had the opportunity, like, to go back, which one, as a child, a 7-year-old Brian or a 10-year-old Brian, which one would you get though?
You know what? I think I'd go for the Terrordrome because I didn't have enough Cobra bases. I think that would have been pretty cool. As much fun as we had with the flag, I think we probably would have used the Terrordrome more. We would have attacked that thing. We would have, launched attacks from the fire bat. I think that I probably would go with that one.
I'd be curious to know in the chat if anybody would pick the flag of the Terrordrome. I'd be like, that's like a poll that I would do. Ken, if you have time on Instagram, put that up, which one, flag or Terrordrome.
I wonder if I could set up a poll while you two talk. Let me just see if I can actually do that. Give me a sec. I'm gonna figure that out. You two are doing great so far. So just you keep doing that. I'm gonna try to put a poll.
Having the flag is a collector flex, though. Let's be real. Yeah. I mean, that's people seek this out as a bit of a flex, and I get that. I really do. But that Terrordrome is there's no it doesn't have the dirty little secret of the flag, you know, having nothing under it. The Terrordrome has everything. I think the biggest knock against the Terrordrome is that some of the rooms inside basically don't have anything inside them, but a lot of them do, and a lot of them are functional, like you said, with the refueling stations and the repair bays and stuff like that. It's more compact, as you can see. It's less of a challenge for collectors to find the space for it. And yeah, every square inch of it has something to do.
The biggest flaw that I can see with the Terrordrome is that I don't own one. That's the biggest flaw. I've actually seen a articulated Chad. He actually has 2 Terrordromes and he put them one on top of the other. And I didn't realize that they could stack so well. But
that's awesome, yeah.
You get a tower of Terrordrome. That's, I mean, a little creativity sprinkled in with some salt, and you get a delicious dish. And I mean, I love this stuff. In
the animated series, like with the G.I. Joe headquarters, the Cobra had a Terrordrome, but it was huge. It was giant. So stacking them like that it makes sense to make it more like the animated series and to beef it up. But if you can only manage to get one, you know, if you're one of us, you know, common people who can only get one, it's still really, really cool.
Brendan Haley says, Hans, I will look after your flag for you. That will be my first play set and not a bad way to start. I absolutely agree. It would definitely, well, I mean, as soon as I get one, you'll be first to know. I'm curious to know if anybody has gone online. If you go on Google, please, if you have a few moments, type in the G.I. Joe Resolute flag and look at the isometric drawings that Hasbro proposed after G.I. Joe Resolute came out. They were going to rebuild the flag. And if that was the flag that relaunched, I don't care if that thing cost $1,000. I would have bought that. And it came with a new fancy hypersonic transport. And I don't know who was doing the designs and who was doing, providing the imagination for this thing. But whoever it was clearly a fan of the toy line, because it was very, and if I could coin the same phrase that Joe Berg would use all the time, is very toyetic, had a lot of play features. It was meant to be played with and used, not just simply a display case, which I think for me is what always will win with regards to the Terrordrome. Play value versus display value, so to speak. This doesn't, of course, take anything away from the flag, because as I said before, if I did have one, I'd play the hell out of it. But
yeah, and like, even though I would pick the Terrordrome, I will qualify that with saying we had a lot of fun with the flag, a lot. So yeah, it's just a matter of preference. But yeah, the Terrordrome just has so much going on.
Can we see the poll in the chat there?
I think if you click it, it shows up.
Yeah, but I don't actually see it show up in the chat.
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay.
I'm curious. Do you consider the G.I. Joe General a playset or a
Somebody asked that earlier. I would say yes.
Really? Oh, damn.
See, it's one of those hybrids, kind of like the Mobile Command Center. Is it a vehicle or is it a playset? It can obviously be both. I think it's more of a vehicle than the MCC was, because when you unfold the MCC, it is stationary. Like it is, it is a base. In fact, same friend who had the flag also had the MCC. He was a spoiled kid. Anyway.
Everybody had one.
The pit, the G.I. Joe headquarters from the comic book, we would just pretend that it's underground and the different levels are the levels of the pit. We didn't use it as a vehicle that much. The General is one that I don't have. I've had my eye on it. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. very wide. It's just like really wide. Yeah, it's one of those hybrids. It could either be a vehicle or a playset, depending on how you look at it.
I had no love for the General growing up, but as the more I see people review it recently, the more I'm realizing that the same level of love, I suppose, went into it. I didn't know there were command centers underneath the helicopter deck. I didn't know that there were all these little things. And I have to say, it's very, very enticing, because this is no innuendo for the chat, but if I had to choose between long and wide, I'd go with wide, because shelves are wide, but they're not very long. So
where's Kayla Silva with a joke in the chat when you need her?
Mine out of the gut. But yeah, it is very enticing to me.
Right. Well, you know what? It looks like the Terrordrome was the winner, and in the poll there, I'm having trouble seeing the view, but people are saying that it's 65-35 between the Drome and the Flagg. I think the Terrordrome helps that it comes with a fire bat, but I go Flagg. I just do for some reason. You know,
it's your show. You're allowed to do that.
You're allowed to, yeah.
Buck the trends.
Well, funny enough, this reflects, because myself and Brian make up 66.6%, and you make it 33.3.
Yeah,
so that does accurately reflect.
One of us has to go for the Flagg, you know, statistically. So I guess we know who that is.
Fair enough.
Defensive. I mean, in the Flagg's corner, because it's almost impossible for me to get one. I was speaking to a carpenter, and I was going to give him a blueprint to cut out the deck and to try to build one out of wood. And then my wife looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." And then so I had to squash the idea for a little while.
Yeah. The Flagg is also difficult. Like if you order it and have it shipped, it's difficult to ship mainly because of that middle deck piece.
Yes.
That is one large piece. It does not break down into smaller parts, and it takes a substantial box to ship it in. It is not easy to get.
You typically, the easiest thing is to use the stroller box for your kid or the car seat box for your kid. Don't throw it out. Fold it up so that you can put it up against the wall, and that'll protect it. All right. And Mega J Retro mentions the Thunder Tank. Yeah, the Super 7 Thunder Tank, the recent one.
The thing is, I don't know. I've always... it's about the size of the General, isn't it?
The Thunder Tank?
Was it bigger than the General?
The Super 7 one, probably bigger.
What? Okay.
People are just receiving it, so I'm not
10-year-old
sure.
Ken, 10-year-old Brian, and 12-year-old Hans. Yes, I'm older. We all sit down to play. How do you play with the seventh, with the Thunder Tank that big? It becomes a playset at that point. What are the parameters by which we use to judge that which is playset and that which is vehicle? I mean,
I think that might be a good segue to the other oversized, opulent playset / vehicle of the 80s, and I am, of course, speaking of the Defiant space shuttle.
I did not get a chance to get a photo with that before we started.
Very pertinent issues about that big thing.
Fragile.
That's what she said. Anyway, so many jokes. Anyway, so who wants to start that one? I don't own one.
It was my grail for a while, and then I found the Flagg first, and I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going with the Flagg. Yeah. And I heard that the Defiant is fragile as hell. But it does come with two of the best pilots / figures that could ever come with a playset. So that's what it's got going for it, right? Hard top and payload are just great figures to come with something. So
the figures are great. The playset is several orders of magnitude more complex than the Flagg. It's got way more parts. Just because a playset this size is the production numbers are going to be lower in general than most vehicles. It's hard to find parts. Every part of it is expensive if you're trying to complete one. And yeah, there are parts that are incredibly fragile. It's also huge. It would, like the Terrordrome, it would sit on the deck of the Flagg. It's the Flagg is still substantially larger, but it's still really big and a bit of a challenge to find where to display it, where to put it. But Hans asks the question, how do you play with something that big? I did not have the Defiant as a kid. As an adult, it's really heavy. As an adult moving this thing around, it's heavy. It has three parts. It has the crawler gantry, which raises up to launch the shuttle. The doors open. That's really huge and heavy. Then it has the booster part, which is enormous. And then the shuttle attaches onto that. The two of them together, if you're like 9 years old trying to play with this, you're going to need 2 or 3 of your friends to tote this thing around. So yeah, unlike in space, it is not weightless. So it's I don't since I didn't have it back then, I don't know exactly how kids back then played with it. I would imagine that it got parked on the couch and then you took the things out and pretended you were on the moon or something. But it's big, it's heavy, it's complex. Parts of it are fragile, and if you're trying to get one or complete one, it is absurdly expensive and difficult to find parts.
Yeah, and the mic for hardtop, to say the least.
Yeah,
and the 2 control levels for payload. I mean, that's just my own experience, right? Like I don't own a Defiant. I have a few pieces to one, but I'm still too far away from actually completing one, so I don't know if I ever will. But some people asked about the General. I used to have. I mean, my friend used to have the General, and he would ram it up against the side of my mobile command center. So I'm like, it definitely was more like a battering ram of a vehicle.
I feel like it's funny, the Defiant, if you had one when you were a child and you didn't know what to do with it, but if you held your breath until 1991 or 92 when Star Brigade came out,
yeah,
at that point it would have suddenly become amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, because it was gone from shells by the time.
Yeah. So I think it's not a case of, it was just a case of like, oh man, I think that's kind of the case. It wasn't a case of like, it's terrible. It's just,
if the Defiant had come out a bit later as a Star Brigade playset, think about that. First of all, it probably would have been a little less complex, a little more 90s, a little less opulent, but maybe a little bit more playable. They would have put some spring-loaded missile launchers and junk like that on, like the 1991 headquarters. They could have put like targets on it to blow things up. It might have been more playable if it had come out in like 93 with Star Brigade. It's interesting to imagine what the 90s might have done with it.
Yeah,
it would have been hot pink.
So maybe it's a good thing we didn't get it. Why don't we talk through these 2 playsets next?
I didn't think that when we mentioned playsets, we'd be bringing up the Rolling Thunder, because
no, it's a gargantuan, bud.
I own the Rolling Thunder, and I think that year its competitor was obviously it came out, I think, the same year with the Defiant, I think. But
no, they were a year apart. They were a year apart.
But it faced off against the Bug, right?
I think it's more comparable to the Bug, yeah. At least in size, but it's like longer.
The only reason I bring that up is because that year, my brother got the Rolling Thunder, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" But my brother wasn't a G.I. Joe fan. And the next year, my brother got the Bug, and I got nothing. And I'm like, "But I was what is this? What is this anyway?" I think the Rolling Thunder is a war crime.
Yes, it's the mobile ICBM silo.
That is the nuclear option.
The balls that they had at Hasbro to make and release this thing, it was a different time. It was a different time. And who knows? Cobra Island, they could have nukes, and we can't have a missile gap between GI Joe and Cobra. But well, I mean, I see it more as a vehicle than a playset. As a vehicle, it's awesome. It has so many things. It's loaded with features. Got the little car there. Lots of space for figures. It's really cool. But yeah, the main feature, which you can see sticking up there, is the twin. I know they didn't call them nukes, but let's be real.
Those were nukes.
Yeah, that's what they were.
That's what they were, for sure. What I liked about the Rolling Thunder is it felt like a vehicle designed by the military for the military. Not only the color, but it felt like this kind of, Soviet behemoth, very angular, deflect the bullets off the carcass kind of thing. And it's like, what should we do with it? Put more guns, missiles. All right. And they put more of that on it as much as they could. What are we going to do with this space? Put yellow missile underneath. They see it come. It felt very military. It
Absolutely.
didn't feel like this was not a tax write-off,
Yeah, it's from the more is more school of vehicle design.
And once again, I really didn't think of it as much as a place as much as I did a vehicle. But the coolest part to me, despite the gigantic, missile launcher, was actually that I'm pointing like anyone can see what the hell I'm pointing. Anyway, right behind the cockpit, to those who don't know, there's a small command center with a tiny seat inside there, and it fits. I can't remember who I think it was Psych Out, who I like as a GI Joe. I'll fight you in the street for that one too. Psych Out was cool. Anyway, and he would always be like the tactical command guy, because I didn't read the file card. I didn't know he was a psychologist. I thought he was science man. You know what I mean? And I think that was the coolest part. It was a thoughtful inclusion on this thing that was essentially a giant, not only battering ram, but a fire and missiles spewing vehicle. And I think that's one thing that really separated a lot of a GI Joe from all the other toy lines, is there was always a dual aspect to every vehicle and playset. The vehicle could break down. You pop off the engine cover. You had something for Techno Viper to do. You had something for Cover Girl to fix. You had something to do aside from just fire missiles.
Yes,
which I think is what made it great. And even on something which, as I said, as you so rightly said, emphasizes the more is more theory, it really does still have something for the TAC officers to do. Mainframe, all the rest of them, dial tone. They had something to do in this beast.
It did come with possibly the worst action figure, though. The
Armadillo.
Yeah, that figure is ass ugly. That's amazing.
Nice pants, bro.
That's incredible. Like, it's a gorgeous vehicle. I'm still calling it a vehicle rather than a playset. It's amazing, very playable, but I guess they put all the effort into the vehicle, and they're like, oh, we got to put a figure with it. Slap something together. Put as little paint on it as possible.
Was he all new tooling?
I think so, but I think so, but nothing went together. Like he had the arm wrappings like Storm Shadow for some reason, and then the helmet, no human head can fit in that helmet. It's squeezing. It's like the shape of his head to fit in that helmet would be like this.
Maybe he had an accident. You don't know.
Yeah,
but being very unfair to him.
Tragic skull amputation.
But yes, I
full Bad Batch style.
You actually forgot he existed until you brought him up there. And yes, he was probably the most uninspired driver of any GI Joe vehicle of all time. I do believe. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Even Skidmark had his ups,
sure.
And Armadillo just had downs.
Well, are there any play sets that we didn't cover on this one among the
MCC?
Big boys? I know it's there though, but we're gonna get into it. We kind of talked about it earlier.
I think one that deserves mention is the 1991 GI Joe headquarters.
91 or 92?
To me, it's maybe a little underrated. It's kind of what I was wishing the 1983 headquarters could have been. It had electronics. It had lots of places for figures, tons of features. It had a jail cell that kind of worked a bit more like a jail cell. It's tiny, small, still probably a war crime,
Geneva Convention, war crime.
But that was I didn't have it as a kid. I only got it as an adult, and playing around with it. Not only does it have a really large footprint, it also folds up.
Yep.
So all these issues that you have with the size of the other ones, not as much of an issue with this. You fold it up, you put it in your closet or wherever, and it actually takes up very little space when you're not using it and playing with it. This is one that got reused for Street Fighter 2.
Yes.
The Toxo Lab.
So it's one that if you want different colors, there's the alternative. You can get the Street Fighter one. I think it's like purple. So that's kind of cool. And one thing that I wanted to mention, since Hans talked briefly about the Resolute flag design, the Mobile Command Center at one point was reissued. There was a post-vintage, so apparently they had the tooling of it, and that was a sizable playset. So even though the likelihood of us getting a flag at any point in the future is very, very slim, with the re-release of something as big as the Mobile Command Center, at one time there was maybe a little hope that we might see some new iteration of the flag. At this point, I think I would be surprised if they still had the tooling, but even if they did, it would be so prohibitively expensive. But yeah, at one time they actually re-released that huge MCC, and it was something for maybe the collectors who didn't get it back in the day. So yeah, so that's maybe a little post vintage, but it's just something to think about as far as the GI Joe fandom and the collecting environment in the 2000s, the late 90s through the 2000s, kind of that era before the movies started. That is a bit of a gap. It's something that I really didn't know anything about until I came back around to it later.
Speaking of the movies, actually, there was one other playset with all new tooling released in 2009, which was the G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra Pit.
Yes. Yep.
Which actually shared a lot in common with the MCC. And it is the only G.I. Joe playset that I own right now. It's the only modern tooled one. And it got ragged on, boy. It ragged on that thing. But when I got it, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And then I made that critical error that adults make. Let me go online and see what people think about this thing. Boy, they hated that thing. And I was like, why? It's got the jail. It expands out. It had the lights and the sounds. It's got the what's not Dennis, what's his name again? Whatever. General Hawk action figure with a coffee mug.
Oh, Dennis Quaid?
Yeah. Dennis Quaid, yeah. It had a, bunk beds. It had a medical center. It had it hit the points of the vintage.
Yeah, it had the bells and whistles you needed, but people wanted more because of the way it looked when it was folded up. So, yeah.
If it had come with Randy Quaid, that would have been worth it. But
show me both of them.
But no, I haven't actually. I haven't actually gotten into that one. I haven't actually played with that one myself. But it looks good. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with it. I know it. I do think it's ironic that it's called the Pit, but it's mobile.
CMCC.
But when we were kids, we pretended that the MCC was the pit, so it has that kind of in common with it too. So it's something that I'd like to look at. It's not my era, but there's still a lot of cool stuff that came out around then. Thanks to Rise of Cobra, the movie, for all of its faults, it did give us a lot of new stuff at that time. So, yeah, I'd like to look at it. I'm interested.
The modern stuff, the Rise of Cobra. I mean, that was my jam. I had gotten out of G.I. Joe. I very vividly remember I was much older and I was away studying. I went into a comic store. I was studying sequentials at the time, and I saw Rise of Cobra figures and Pursuit of Cobra figures. A huge section in a comic store called Silver Snail in Toronto. And I was like, this is amazing. I was with my friend who'd been living in Canada forever, and he was like, oh, you like those? It's like, dude, I like G.I. Joe. And he's like, well, let me buy you one. The bastard, because that's he bought me a beachhead, and that started it, and now my whole collection is basically that one beachhead plus everything since. But man, Rise of Cobra gets a lot of flack, and I don't think it deserves it, but that's another story.
Hindsight always makes things a little bit better. And one thing we didn't touch on is that there were play sets in the 60s and 70s as well. I mean, obviously this is a Real American Hero discussion, but they did do small sets around that period of time. I know Action Man had a large training tower, but just in case anybody notices it, that we didn't talk about that, figured I'd give it a quick mention. I don't think we forgot any of the big play sets, but so I guess that's okay. We covered it. I know there's the whole what's a vehicle, what's a play set. There's a bit of a...
And there were like dozens of small play sets as well, and that's one thing that I appreciate about the Real American Hero line is that there were the biggest and the most opulent, but not every kid could get that, so they had something for everyone, and some really good ones too. So there were some small options, some small play sets, like battlefield accessories that were basically just some parts. Yeah, I'm helping this helps the algorithm too. This is helping the algorithm. See, now
I was going to make it
1.5 million views just because of this.
I think to me the best small playset that ever came out of G.I. Joe is Checkpoint Alpha. I find that is and I only ever saw it in when you bought a vehicle, you get a little slip and it would say, send in how many ever flag points. I lived in Trinidad, so I couldn't do that. I couldn't get those. I used to send flag points away and get back nothing. And so it used to be like, come on, man, because I didn't read the fine print only in the States. But when I saw Checkpoint Alpha, I was like, this is the one I'm going to get. Send away my stuff, and all my flag points gone for nothing. Come on, man. But that was, I don't know what Grail is, but
But that was a great one. It's something that if you didn't have anything else, it's still something that you could use. You could still play with it. If you did have, a base, you can add it to your base. But yeah, we had like the bivouac, that we could use when they're out in the field, or for a camping trip or whatever. There was so much. And that's one of the great things about G.I. Joe, and one of the reasons that it's so rich in collectability, is that you can have your flex and you can get the flag, but there was so much more at every price point, so that every kid could have something.
I think anybody in the military can agree that the majority of the time you don't actually spend it fighting. You spend it like training, running, moving things around, and more standing up guarding. That's more what you do. In your entire career in the military, you might spend maybe 2 hours, and hopefully not that much, ever fighting. The rest of it is mostly, patrols and whatnot. And that to me is what makes G.I. Joe great. And what kind of kills me a little bit, and I was just doing this before I came on the show, I was looking for other 1/18 scale compatible things. And I found 1 second. What's the name of it? Come on. Click and Play. Something called Click and Play. And they have it's called Life of Soldiers. It's like little bunk beds with little lockers and Checkpoint Alpha style stuff. And I don't know what to call it, a bunk and just little things that you would use to sprinkle life into your dioramas and things you'd play with and whatnot. And it's something that G.I. Joe was doing before what these guys did. And the figures are very simple, very much akin to the old G.I. Joe figures with their articulation. And now they've taken the notes that Hasbro had in those days, and they haven't quite copied the homework exactly, but they've done enough of it that there's certainly people on that side, who've been reading the same documents. And I suggest anybody who does want to spruce up their stuff, check out Click and Play, check out Power Team Elite, check out all those things, because they do have a lot of little play sets that you may not be able to afford in G.I. Joe's side, but these guys are still running guard towers and stuff for 15 US, 20 US, and the little bunkers is 50 US, and it comes with everything you need to set up a wonderful small diorama and get some more use out of your vintage and modern figures. And I think that's really that's what it's about, man. Gotta get some happiness in there. Get them endorphins going.
In the 80s, this is what we would use the knockoff brands for, because there was the Core and the Remco Sergeant Rock stuff that had these little things that came with them. We would throw all of those things in with G.I. Joe. They were super cheap. G.I. Joe would never make something like that because they want something that's got lots of features and stuff. But this stuff is just world building things. So some sandbags and a machine gun nest or whatever, a little tower or whatever. So that's what we would do in the 80s, because as much as G.I. Joe had, there was all, some things that G.I. Joe didn't necessarily have. But somebody did. And at that time, the action figure aisle was overflowing with lots of toys and companies that were wanting some of that G.I. Joe money. So it was a really great time. You could get some play sets and things like that on the cheap, or just things to enhance your play sets. There was just all kinds of stuff like that out there.
I think there's now as well, and I think that, as I said, if you're a collector, even now, it might suck. You might go into your Walmart or whatever. I don't know what it's like in America. I don't live there, but I know when I walk into my toys, we got a lot of those bargain toys as well. But just look, you're in the mall already. Just stop in, look and see what they've got. You might find something cool and cheap, something you weren't even looking for, and it might be just what you need for your playtime as a grown-ass man or woman. You know what I mean?
Well, for sure. And imagine that this was just the play sets of G.I. Joe, and it already took a whole stream. That just shows how gangbusters G.I. Joe was. I think that's the word they use on I think David Bonner said that on Toys That Made Us. It just shows how gangbusters they were. They could do play sets of this size. Now, in this era, look, you got Castle Grayskull, Snake Mountain over on the Motu side. You got Fortress Maximus over on the Transformer side. There was so freaking much. Imagine doing a whole topic on the small play sets, or even non G.I. Joe play sets. I thought about doing that as another stream as well, but we had a lot of ideas. Hasbro had a lot of ideas in the 1980s and through the early 90s as well. Well, gentlemen, so if anybody's catching this after the fact, if you see I left camera a lot, I tried to keep it discreet, but I ended up having to leave longer periods than I thought. It just having a bit of a health flare up, nothing too serious, just one of the things that happens every now and then. I thought I was over it before the stream, and I wasn't, so just had to go.
He had a birthday, ladies and gentlemen. He had a birthday.
That's part of it.
What age does to you.
This is what age does. If you have Crohn's disease and you pseudo party the night before and you say, "Oh, my stream's not till 1 o'clock Pacific time," we're good. Then I'm like, what can I do? Well, this guy here is a wealth of G.I. Joe knowledge. This guy here loves to talk about stuff in general. So if you're only going to appear for half a stream, these are the two folks to do it with. So, wasn't mailing it in or anything today. Prep the photos. Figured if I just throw up a photo of the flag and the Terrordrome together, they can go for half an hour.
Yeah. So, and Hans is a wealth of knowledge too. I don't know what it's knowledge of, but he's a wealth of some kind of knowledge. I'm sure.
Barbecue or
just
something.
The way he carries himself in terms of his absolute
Fake it till you make it. Just fake it until you make it.
And eventually you make it,
likes
and nobody knows you were faking it.
No one will know you were faking it this whole time. I don't know the name of any G.I. Joes. I haven't known it yet. I've been purely educated just by being on streams. Yeah, the guy in the red. You know.
What is G.I. Joe? I don't even know.
What is this? I don't know what G.I. stands for. But
love it.
It's always great to be here. It's always good to talk, Joe. And as I said, I just can't wait to go to Joe Fest. This might be really easy for you guys to get there, but this is probably the only time in my life I'll be able to afford it. And I just can't wait because I've never seen a Terrordrome. Mine's a virgin Terrordrome eyes. They've never seen it. I've never seen a flag. You know,
Hoodie, are you gonna have a booth there this time, or are you just gonna?
I'm not. I debated on whether or not I was gonna get a table. I did get a table last year. And that was cool and everything, but I actually spent a lot of time away from the table because I wanted to go to all of the panels and see all of the people. And it's a trade-off, right? Because if I have a table, I'll sell sketches and, people all know where to find me. But this time around, I think I want the freedom to go around and to do more things. So no table this time. But I will not be hard to find. So I'll see everybody.
All right. No, sounds good. So, Brian, I know Hans kind of said what you were already working on, but did you want to tell everyone where they could find you and what else you might be working on other than?
I'm sorry about that,
man.
It's all right. It's fine. No, it's okay. Actually, it's not any big secret. It's just that there are some viewers who want to be surprised. They don't want the spoilers, and I've learned this. I wanted to give people a preview, but they're like, no, surprise us. So anyway, but yeah, so I'm doing vintage G.I. Joe toy reviews on YouTube. If you look up Hooded Cobra Commander 788 or HCC788 for short, you should be able to find me. I've had a couple hiatuses, but I'm back. I'm trying to get back into doing regular reviews. In addition to doing reviews, I also do a weekly live stream. I missed last week, but normally I do a weekly live stream every Tuesday evening. And we talk about G.I. Joe or anything else that we can think of. That's where I opened that thing. But yeah, that's what I got going on. Usually every year we all get together and do Cobra Convergence, this big collaborative event. We haven't gotten that started yet, but that's something that I need to get started organizing. It's going to be here before we know it, but that's what we got going on. Ken was part of it. So yeah, we usually have a lot of fun with it.
You know what? I had fun. Like last year was my first Cobra Convergence, and I know for you'd specified last year because you took a hiatus the year before that it was going to be a bit hard to pull off, but you did, and it sounds like you're confident riding in the momentum for this to go 2 years in a row for Cobra Convergence. And yeah, I mean, I used to watch bits and pieces of Cobra Convergence over the years, and it was kind of cool very cool being part of it. Last year, and I know you said you were not on for your Tuesday stream, but now you've learned a tactic. Get someone who knows how to talk a lot.
That's it.
When you got to go when you got to go deal with an angry stomach, multiple times in the same 75-minute stream, you got someone who people are going to listen to anyway. So
yeah,
anytime, man.
I'll just point the camera at the cat. Oh, sorry. I'll just point the camera at him, and that's how we'll solve that problem.
There you go, Hans. What are you working on other than staring at Brian's cat?
There's a joke. I've been fighting every time
I know where that's going. Yeah.
I've been working on some sequentials right now on my Instagram. That's pretty much the only thing I've been doing. I've been thinking about doing smaller videos for Instagram. I mean, I'm playing with the idea of starting a YouTube channel, but I'm taking inspiration not from tech guys like you, because I don't have that kind of knowledge. I'm more taking it from guys like Bob Squad. I see you in the chat. Someone who just does small little fun videos for little things. But once again, life is really tough. So you'll always find me on Instagram doing art. That's very easy for me to do. I'll always plug this. Get outside, get some exercise, eat right. Sort yourself out. Life's tough. It's real hard, and it's really easy for you to get bogged down by it. So go outside and walk 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Listen to some music that you like while you do it. Drink a lot of water, especially as we're getting advanced now in age. Health is one of those things that tends to hamstring us. I mean, I think we're all in our 40s here, and it ain't getting any easier. So it's time to start fighting back against getting that kind of old. So that's what my Instagram's about. Art and healthy stuff. And every now and then I'll tell a joke or two.
Well, I still tell everybody I'm in my 20s, but nobody believes me anymore. So, you know.
What do they know?
Yeah, what do they know? What do they know? I really want to thank our guests for being on today and for just providing so much insight every single time they get a chance to go live, or, you know, just any opportunity I get to hang out with you folks is just not enough time. I mean, like it just flies by pretty quickly, you know. Even when I'm not feeling at 100%, it flies by very quickly. And I'm like, damn, I missed part of the fun. But it's okay because we'll have lots of fun in the future. Right. So, yes. And apparently the Super Bowl is tomorrow. So that
is correct.
All right.
The video will be competing with this, not exactly competing with the Super Bowl, but for those of you who don't care about, very specifically American sports, an alternative for the other millions of you could watch my video.
There we go. Okay. I'm down for that. All right, cool. Anyway, subscribe to Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Let's pick a goal. Let's say 20,000 subs this year. That work?
Yeah.
All right. And
I'd be happy with 350 followers. I'm at 349. Please follow me on Instagram.
Let's get this guy to 350 today. Like Gazz, the All-Star, has always got the links in the chat. They're also in the description below for those of you that's after the fact. Everyone in the chat, thanks for coming out for this fun stream. Both of you are welcome on anytime on this channel. Just give me a ring. You know where to find me. I'm there. But I guess we'll give everyone a Yo Joe or a Cobra, depending on the faction you're on. I'm going to say Yo Joe because I picked the flag today.
Yo Joe.
Cobra Joe.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye.